When people want clarity, they usually do the most reasonable thing they think about, right? We think, oh, we just have to try harder, or just need to be on the internet and research more and get this answer. Or I need to analyze my symptoms. I need to compare options, and I need to look for that right answer that's going to make me feel like I got the clarity that I'm looking for. And we do this in all aspects of our life. We do this in our careers. We do this in our personal goals and leadership. But in this video, we're going to talk about how it shows up when we're looking at a health issue, a health goal that we want to attack. But just know what we're going to talk about pertains to all aspects of our life. So if you're researching harder and researching to all times of the day, or you're just getting up and trying harder, or you're listening to every guru that you can find on the subject who swears they have done what you're wanting to do, just know you're not doing anything wrong. These are common human ways that we do this, right? We look to get clarity, because when people want clarity, they usually do the most reasonable thing they can think of. We try harder. We're on the internet researching more. We are analyzing our symptoms, and we're comparing options, and we look for the right answer that is going to give us the clarity that we are looking for. And we do this in all aspects of our lives. We do this in our careers. We do this in our personal goals. We do this in leadership. But in this video, we're going to talk about how we're doing it with our health. You have to know this. What we want to talk about today pertains to all aspects of our life, and it pertains to any goal that we are wanting to achieve. So if you're just saying, I got to work harder, I got to try harder, or I just need to find the right answer, I need to be on the internet more, or I need to find that perfect guru that has solved this problem, I want to say this up front. None of what I'm going to talk about today is saying that you're doing anything wrong. These are the most common human ways that we look to get clarity. And health is just an easy place for us to see this pattern, because when something feels off in our bodies, either our stress is high, or our energy is just totally off, or we're not sleeping, our well-being is just not feeling good. It's uncomfortable not knowing why. And so that's when we look for that clarity so clearly. And this makes so much sense. After all, right? Our bodies are just a piece of science. So we really want to understand. But the way we go looking for this clarity can quietly keep us stuck. And it's not because you're failing, because we're using approaches that were never designed for this kind of uncertainty. So let's talk about some of the common ways that we keep ourselves stuck. The first way I want to talk about is trying to think our way to certainty. This is one of the first things that we do as humans when we want to get health clarity, is that we try to find our way to that certainty. That we ask ourselves questions like, what are the root causes? What am I missing? And if I just understood this better, I would know exactly what to do, and it makes so much sense. We're not off, right? This thinking has worked for us before. Analysis has solved our problems before. But in health, especially when it's burnout, when it's stress, or it's that long-term patterns that are just staying involved in our lives, this isn't an intellectual puzzle. The more we think about the variables that we notice, the more possibilities we see. So instead of getting the clarity, our picture just gets blurrier. And this doesn't mean that you're overthinking because you're anxious. It just means that your mind is trying to protect you. It's doing the thing it's supposed to do. So it's trying to cover every single angle, and that looking at every single angle keeps us stuck. So the next common way that we stay stuck in uncertainty is that we're trying to make sure and wait to feel 100% sure on a situation, on a solution. So if you're wanting to feel completely certain before you begin to make a decision, you're not going to go anywhere. People ask themselves all the time, or say to themselves all the time, I'll just know when it's time. I will feel more confident. I just don't want to do the wrong thing again. And it makes sense. It sounds wise, right? Even responsible. Because when we're certain, we're able to move forward. Our body's like, okay, I got this. But let's be honest. When are we ever certain about a situation? Certainty is so rare. And, health decisions usually involve trade-offs. They usually involve a lot of unknowns and a lot of imperfect information. So if you're waiting to feel 100% sure, that is never going to happen. So you'll be waiting indefinitely. And it's not because you're avoiding action, but because your body and mind are asking for reassurance that certainty is not going to be able to provide. The third most common way is that we just want to gather more information. Unfortunately, the internet will give you lots of information, right? So this will keep us stuck because, with our health, it's so easy to find information. There's so many articles out there. There's so many podcasts for you to listen to. There's so many expert opinions will tell you how they solved their health crisis. There's so many conflicts of information out there these days, especially with health. And so at first, that information that you're seeking can feel very empowering, but over time, that information can make you feel heavy because information doesn't always provide perspective. Sometimes it just adds a lot of noise in our head. And when people feel overwhelmed by health choices, they often assume that they haven't found the right answer yet. And in reality, they may already have enough information for them to move forward, but just no clear way for them to interpret it in a context that pertains to their life. So if you realize yourself in any of these situations, I just want you to slow down for a second. None of these approaches are mistakes. They usually just make sense. They sound responsible and, they're being thoughtful. And responsible people want to do thoughtful things when they're talking about their well-being, and they don't want to make things worse. And this pattern just doesn't show up in our health. Like I said, boy, it shows up in our relationships, shows up in our careers. It shows up in big life transitions. Anything that touches who you are and how you want to live. And this is what keeps us stuck. The most common thread here is that it's not effort or intelligence. It's that all of these approaches keeps us inside our head. And when something matters so much to us, our mind often shifts from clarity to protection. And instead of helping you move forward, it keeps you just circling around, looking for that certainty that people will never exist. And this isn't a personal flaw. It's just your human nervous system doing its work. So in the next video, we're going to talk about what actually helps people move out of this loop. And you have to know it's not pushing harder, and it's not finding the perfect answer, and it's not about collecting more information, but by changing how clarity is created. So for just now, I want you to notice this. If you've been stuck searching for clarity, it is not because you're failing. It's because you're using the tools that were never meant and designed to solve a problem like this. So don't judge yourself by how you've been trying. You're doing the best you know how to do with the tools that you have right now. Clarity does not begin by doing more at all. Rather, it begins with understanding why what you've been doing hasn't worked yet. And that's where we're headed next.